In the early days of my 20s, I thought I had the world figured out. I was fresh out of college, clutching my degree like a trophy, and the future stretched before me like a wide-open road. I had dreams, ambitions, and a sense of invincibility that only youth can provide. I was ready to conquer life, or so I believed. But as the years rolled on, reality began to paint a different picture, one that was far more complex and nuanced than I had anticipated. The first lesson came in the form of a job rejection. I remember the day vividly. I had applied for what I thought was my dream position, a role in a vibrant startup that promised creativity and innovation. I crafted my resume with care, rehearsed my interview answers until they felt like second nature, and walked in with the confidence of someone who had just graduated at the top of their class. I left the interview feeling elated, certain that I had nailed it. But when the email arrived, the sting of rejection hit harder than I expected. At that moment, I learned that failure is a part of life, a truth that no one prepares you for when you're basking in the glow of academic success. I spent the next few days wallowing in self-doubt, questioning my worth and my abilities. I had been told that my 20s were the time to explore and take risks, but no one had warned me about the emotional toll of rejection. It took time, but I began to understand that each setback was not a reflection of my value, but rather a stepping stone toward growth. I learned to embrace failure as a necessary part of the journey, a lesson that would serve me well in the years to come. As I navigated the job market, I discovered another harsh reality, the myth of the dream job. I watched as friends landed positions that seemed perfect on paper, but left them feeling unfulfilled. The corporate world was a far cry from the idealistic visions we had conjured in college. I found myself in a similar situation, working long hours in a role that drained my energy rather than fueling my passion. I learned that sometimes the pursuit of a dream job can lead to a dead end, and the key to fulfillment lies not in the title, but in the work itself. This realization prompted a shift in my perspective. I began to seek out opportunities that aligned with my values, even if they didn't come with the prestige of a fancy title. I volunteered for projects that excited me, networked with people who inspired me, and took on freelance work that allowed me to explore my interests. Slowly but surely, I began to carve out a path that felt authentic to me. The lesson here was clear. It's not about finding the perfect job, it's about creating a career that resonates with who you are. As I delved deeper into my 20s, relationships became another focal point of learning. I had entered this decade with a handful of friendships that felt solid and unshakable. But as life unfolded, I began to see the fragility of these connections. People moved away, changed jobs, fell in love, and suddenly the bonds that once felt unbreakable began to fray. I learned that friendships are not static. They require effort, communication, and sometimes a willingness to let go. One of the most poignant lessons came when a close friend of mine moved to another city for a job opportunity. We had shared countless late-night conversations, laughter, and tears. I assumed that our friendship would withstand the distance, but as the months passed, our calls became less frequent and our texts dwindled. I felt a sense of loss that I hadn't anticipated. It was a painful reminder that relationships, like anything else, require nurturing. I learned that it's essential to invest time and energy into the people who matter, even when life gets busy. At the same time, I discovered the importance of setting boundaries. I had always been the friend who said yes to everything, afraid of disappointing others. But as my schedule filled up with work commitments and personal projects, I realized that I was spreading myself too thin. I began to understand that it was okay to say no, to prioritize my own well-being over the expectations of others. This newfound assertiveness was liberating, allowing me to cultivate deeper connections with those who truly mattered, while also carving out time for self-care. Romantic relationships, too, provided a treasure trove of lessons. I entered my 20s with a naive belief in fairy tale endings. I thought love would be effortless, a smooth ride filled with passion and excitement. But as I navigated the dating landscape, I quickly learned that relationships require work, compromise, and most importantly, communication. My first serious relationship was a whirlwind, filled with intense emotions and a sense of invincibility. But as the initial spark faded, cracks began to appear. We fought over trivial matters, and misunderstandings became all too common. It was during this tumultuous time that I learned the significance of vulnerability. I discovered that sharing my fears and insecurities with my partner could foster deeper intimacy and understanding. It was a lesson in honesty, one that would shape my future relationships. Eventually, I had to face the reality that not every relationship is meant to last. The breakup was painful, a heart-wrenching experience that left me questioning my worth. But in the aftermath, I found clarity. I learned that endings can be just as valuable as beginnings. Each relationship taught me something new about myself, my needs, my desires, my capacity for love. I began to appreciate the beauty of growth that comes from heartache, a lesson that would resonate throughout my 20s. As I continued to navigate this decade, I found myself grappling with the concept of identity. In my early 20s, I was still trying to figure out who I was, often feeling like a chameleon, shifting to fit the expectations of those around me. It was a confusing time, filled with self-discovery and experimentation. I tried on different personas, from the ambitious careerist to the free-spirited artist, each one reflecting a different facet of my personality. It wasn't until I faced a significant life change, a move to a new city for a job, that I began to confront my identity head-on. Alone in a new environment, I had the space to explore who I truly was, free from the influences of my past. I immersed myself in new experiences, joined clubs, and met people from diverse backgrounds. It was a transformative period that taught me the importance of self-acceptance. I learned that my identity was not a fixed entity, but rather a fluid tapestry woven from my experiences, beliefs, and passions. In the midst of this exploration, I also encountered the harsh realities of adulthood. Responsibilities began to pile up: bills, rent, career expectations, and I felt the weight of the world on my shoulders. The carefree days of college seemed like a distant memory, replaced by the relentless grind of daily life. It was during this time that I learned the value of balance. I discovered that while ambition is essential, so is the need for rest and rejuvenation. I began to prioritize self-care, carving out time for hobbies and activities that brought me joy. I started painting again, a passion I had abandoned in the chaos of adulthood. I explored nature, took long walks, and found solace in the simple act of being present. This lesson was crucial. I realized that taking care of my mental and emotional well-being was not a luxury but a necessity. It allowed me to show up fully in my career and relationships, a reminder that I couldn't pour from an empty cup. As I approached the latter half of my 20s, I found myself reflecting on the concept of success. Society often paints a narrow picture of achievement, equating it with wealth, status, and accolades. But as I watched friends chase these ideals at the expense of their happiness, I began to question what success truly meant to me. I realized that it wasn't about climbing the corporate ladder or accumulating possessions. It was about finding fulfillment in the journey. I started to redefine my goals, focusing on experiences rather than material gains. I sought out opportunities that aligned with my values, whether that meant traveling to new places, volunteering for causes I believed in, or pursuing creative projects that ignited my passion. This shift in perspective was liberating. I learned that success is subjective, a personal definition that evolves over time. As I approached my 30th birthday, I found myself filled with a sense of gratitude for the lessons I had learned along the way. My 20s had been a roller coaster ride, filled with highs and lows, triumphs and failures. But through it all, I had gained a deeper understanding of myself and the world around me. I had learned the importance of resilience, the value of authentic connections, and the beauty of self-discovery. Looking back, I realized that the truth about my 20s was not a single narrative, but a tapestry of experiences that shaped me into who I am today. I had navigated the complexities of relationships, faced the realities of adulthood, and ultimately found my own definition of success. As I stood on the precipice of a new decade, I felt a sense of excitement and anticipation for what lay ahead, ready to embrace the challenges and opportunities that life would undoubtedly present.